The three panelists are, of course, our beloved rector, Yang Berbahagia, Professor Datuk Seri Dr. Zaliha Kamaruddin. She's our rector, and I think you all know also that she's an alumni of the university. We also have Yang Berbahagia Datuk Dr. Nasharuddin Mat Isa, Executive Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, Global Movement of Moderates Foundation. Datuk Nasharuddin, I'm very, very happy to also mention here, is also an IIUM alumni. And the third speaker or panelist is Dr. Ismail Yaylaje from Istanbul Seher University. Not an alumni, but a very dear friend of IIUM. So without further delay, I would like to hand over the floor to Brother Anas.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in. It's an honor and privilege to be invited to moderate this session with this wonderful panelists, especially my rector, Dato Prof. Zaliha Kamaruddin. Our MC mentioned, the session will be about the strengthened Islamic values towards dynamic future. And as the Minister of Youth and Sport mentioned about wasatiyya, are vital principles in Islam for all aspects. It approaches love, tolerance, and amity to prevent tolerance and extremism. Within the Muslim world itself, different interpretations of Islam due to number of manhaj and mazhab, the sect, which divided themselves into conservative and liberal groups. In addition, the rising of non-state actors in promoting extremism and terrorism in the name of jihad, in the name of Islam, has implicated negative perspectives towards Muslim and Islam. Globalization allows for transboundary recruitments by using the social media platforms has come to this session. Thus, this session will be aiming, inshallah, to explore the education, the actual principle of Islam, namely wasatiyya, in another 30 years from now, inshallah, to argue on the disparity between conservative and liberal Muslims and way forward, to embrace in religious culture diversity and usage of social media to counter extremism and to promote the Islamic valuely, historically. So without further ado, I would like to pass the mic to Yang Berbahagia, to Dr. Nasruddin Mat Isa, the Executive Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, Global Movement of Moderators Foundation. And I just got to know that he's as well alumni of IIUM. Please, the mic is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala wa ba'd. Brother Anas, moderator, Honorable Rector, and our third speaker, brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. It is always good to come back to IIUM. The last time I was here, just a few months back, when we organized a special session for a guest to the country, Sheikh Rashid Ghanouchi, when he was here and he was awarded the honorary doctorate by IIUM. But talking about being an alumni, I'm an alumni of two. I was a former student here. I did my master in comparative law here in this faculty. And I was also a former lecturer at the faculty of Kulliyah of Law before I left and joined another university. Before then, getting myself involved in politics. But I'm now the CEO, Executive Chairman of an organization which is called the Global Movement of Moderates Foundation. That is what I'm going to present to you a bit in how we can use that platform in promoting the agenda that has been set up by IIU, by what has been mentioned by the Minister just a moment ago. But first of all, please do apologize me because I really have to leave after my presentation because we are expecting at around 1:30 a guest of 70 young Muslim Philippines. This is part of what we are doing. We are expecting this group of young Muslims from Sulu, the southern part of the Philippines. Muslims living in the largest Catholic country in the world, never being exposed about others. They only know about their community. They only know about their mosque. They only know about their ustaz or their imam or their community leaders. It was since last year that we discussed with the Philippine Army. Interesting, yeah? We are doing even work with the Philippine Army. And with the Philippine Embassy here in Kuala Lumpur, of the need for us to give exposures to the young ones, especially to the Muslim, about what peaceful coexistence means, about living togetherness. Because we believe, in my organization, we believe here in Malaysia, and I think also that is the aspiration of us all, there is a need for us to promote in order for us to give a more positive image of Islam, a more positive image of, the teaching of peace, the teaching of coexistence that was brought down to us by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is a need for us to be engaged in especially those who are never being exposed to others beside the fact that they are Muslim. So last year we brought 50 of them, and this year there will be 70 of them. We brought them here to KL, we give them exposure, and the remark that we received last year was very interesting. Because beside the engagement that we had in my office, we also bring them along to Kuala Lumpur to see things that they have never seen and never thought of before this. They were surprised to see mosque beside a church beside a temple. They were surprised to see Muslim, the majority in Malaysia, and they're thinking of Muslim before they crossed the border to Malaysia. Their concept of Muslim is backwardness, poverty, and those kind of notion. But when they come down here to KL, they saw the development of Kuala Lumpur, the development of Putrajaya, the level of education that we had, and the mixing of all races and religion, staying together, living together, working together, and even studying together without having any major issues. Now, please allow me to go back a bit to history. If you are talking about the future of Muslim, the future of youth, the future of leaders of Islam, I think the historical fact of Islam and what Islam has contributed has mentioned either in the rector's speech just now or even the Honorable Minister's speech just now. There is also a need for us to look at history. And that part of history that I would like to share with you today is during the period of the Muslim reign, or the Muslim rule of Andalusia, which is known as La Convivencia. Now, that period of time is something that is to be attributed to the practical teaching of Islam in a very challenging environment. It is not about Islam in Arabia. It's not about Islam in Basra. It's not about Islam in Dimashq or Islam in Al-Qahira and Cairo. It is about Islam ruling in the heart of Spain. Despite that Islam ruled that part of Europe, but because of the openness, because of the level of understanding and appreciation of others that was practiced in that particular period of time, which is called La Convivencia, not only that Islam thrived, Islam developed, but a civilization also developed. The living togetherness between Muslim, Christian, and Jews, most of the wazir or the ministers of the Muslim rulers in that particular part of histories are either Christian or Jews, but despite that, they developed a civilization. You name it. Yeah, architecture, literature. For those of you who have been to Alhambra, For those of you who have been to Cordoba, one of the largest libraries in the world at that particular time was a library in Cordoba, which, compiles about 400,000 books in that particular time. We are talking about 10th, 11th century. Yeah? Now, why does that happen? Because the way Islam was promoted, the way Islam was being shared, and the way Islam was being ruled at that particular time, it opened doors, it gave, spaces, it gave opportunity for others to participate in the country, even in the administration of the government at that particular time. That was the history. Now we are looking to the future. Or before we're looking to the future, at the current position that we are now in the Muslim world, as rightly mentioned by the Honorable Minister, that the issues that are confronting us is not just coming from outside. There are even issues that are confronting between us. The fail to accept differences among us, that high, I don't say it's understanding, but the high concept of, thinking that they are the best, none others are not as good as they are. The failure for us to look at the opportunity that we have in the diversity among us, the vast human capital that we have in the Muslim world, and with that failure, it has cost us also very dearly in our communication, in our communicating with those who are not within our sphere and within our circle, which is the non-Muslim. So that is very reason, from my perspective at least, why we are now in that very negative perception of the world towards Islam and the Muslim. So looking forward, in the context of Malaysia, in 2010, the Prime Minister delivered a speech at the United Nations General Assembly talking about the concept of moderation, the concept of wasatiyah. There is a need for the world to come together, whatever your religion is, whatever your belief is, whatever your political affiliation is, but to come together into one voice in promoting moderation. It is the teaching of Islam, the teaching of all the other tradition of the major religion in the world. He promoted that in order for us to come as one voice in countering and providing a counter narrative towards that small minority voices who are speaking loudly, despite the fact that those who are against any act of terrorism, any act of extremism, are actually in the majority. But the main issue or the main problem that we are facing is that we are the silent majority that are not raising up our voices to the level that it should be. In 2012, there was an international conference organized here in Kuala Lumpur, where the Global Movement of Moderate Foundation was established. In 2015, I was called in as the new CEO of the organization. In 2015 too, it was organized, or it was announced that GMM was announced as an ASEAN initiative. And since 2015 up till this very day, we have been trying to promote and engaging ourselves to promote the, I'm not saying the true teaching of Islam, but we try to bring in that value or that concept that has been left behind by many or most of the Muslim community. What is wasatiyah? What is moderation? It is not about compromise. It is not about backwardness. It is not about letting people to be free to do whatever they want to do. It is to be based on the basic teaching of the religion within the context and within the framework of, for example, in the Malaysian context, within the framework of the federal constitution. We are trying to promote that. So how I see the future of the Muslim youth, the Muslim next generation, the millennials will be how able are we to promote that concept of al-wasatiyah to the world by promoting the practical aspect has been proven by history through that period of convivencia and applying it in the context of the modern world. The challenges is there. It's not going to be easy because, as I mentioned just now, we are in the silent majority. So the intention of the establishment of the organization, for example, the GMM or the Global Movement of Moderates Foundation, is to give a platform, especially to the young youth, to the young Muslim, to the Muslim youth, to use that platform and raise that voices of the silent majority. So with that, GMM is there. Though it is based here in Malaysia, it belongs to you. Please make use of the organization. Please make use of the platform. We are offering two programs. The first one is the GMM Club. I've already discussed with the Honorable Rector a few months back, and I just mentioned to her just now that the establishment of a GMM Club will be here also in IIU soon, because I've already established it in a few other universities in the country, and also a few universities has already started that program. For example, we have one organization, a small organization now, supporters in Bangkok, in Jordan, and also in the US. So the first offering, or the first platform to make things turn into practical. It's not just about theory. It's not just about academic exercise, but turning things, making people work, making people come up with programs, making people interact and connected to each other, the GMM Club. The second one, which might be of concern to the Youth Council, is the Alliance of Researchers on Moderation. Having an academic background, while I was here in IIU, and after that I joined UKM, being exposed to the academic world, I always believe from that particular day up till today that whatever we do as Muslims, whatever that we want to offer to the world, whatever that we want to support as a solution to the current crisis of the world, it must be data-based. It must be research-based. It must be based on information and right interpretation of things. And that can't be done just by having dialogue session, just by having negotiations, so on and so forth. It has to be based on data. It has to be based on research. So we are establishing an alliance of researchers on moderation, and this is where, again, the participation of academics like yourself is very much needed, very much appreciated. Once we are able to compile that contribution of us in the form of data, in the form of research, and in the form of organizations of programs, engagement, and dialogue, I think that we could at least give a solution to the current situation, the current problems, and the current challenges that we're facing. Now, what needs to be done is about solution. What needs to be done is about offering things which comes in the form of practicality, not just about theory, and not just about developing just the nostalgic rhetoric of looking back into the contribution of Islam, but rather looking forward to what we can contribute towards the future. That is a bit of my contribution for this session. And as mentioned just now, I first of all apologize to the rector, but I really have to leave because this is an official thing organized by the Philippine Army, organized by the Philippine Embassy here in Kuala Lumpur. So I pray for the success of this seminar for the next 2 days. And as always, we keep on praying for the success and future development of IIU, inshallah.
Thank you very much, Yang Berbahagi, Dr. Nasruddin. I think you have summarized the wasatiyya term in a very short and packed and good way, and I think a lot of us will be having questions. And since that, you can leave your email with us, and we can text you maybe later on at the questions. Okay, we can take question and answer session now.
Not only emails. I will, if you would like to jot down my website, our website, it is www.gmmoderates.org. You are more than we are more than happy to receive any suggestion, any collaboration, and any comments, to what we are doing.
And hope to see you again, inshallah.
Thank you very much. Sorry for that.
Okay. Moving for our next speaker, yang berbahagi Dato Dr. Zaliha Kamaruddin, Director of International Islamic University, Malaysia, to present her speech. فلتتفضل مشكورة.
Thank you, Brother Anas. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. If you don't mind, I like to stand while presenting. I feel more lively standing. I have prepared a few slides, but I hope this is not like a lecture, but the slides is just to help me and guide me in the presentation. Otherwise, I will go for network where, although this intellectual discourse limits you, but at the same time, I don't want it to be one flow only. You can ask questions, or perhaps you can share a few of your experiences. When I was approached to give this short on strengthening Islamic values towards dynamic future, it is a very wide area. So I'm trying to put some framework so that the discussion can be done in not more than 20 minutes. All right, in my first slide, right? When we talk about values, we have different definition of values, but I thought this would be a very general definition where values can be defined as one's principles or standards of behavior. There must be standards of behavior, otherwise legally, coming from a law person, I'm a law person, if you do not have standard behaviors, people do not know who you are, right? I can say that I am Zaliha, so like, how is she, what is she? But you have to have a standard behavior so that people know who you are in terms of your personality. Whether you are a very serious person, whether you are a very committed person. So in IIUM, we train you as leaders to be very committed person. You cannot have leaders, people who like jumping and you don't know who they are because, or you always move your targets from time to time. People cannot follow you, right? You have to have your own principle so that you are known by your principle. And this is a must in today's world. Or we are talking about TN 50, 30 years down the road. This will not move. You must have your principles, or sometimes what we call values. Because values determine whether you know what is right from wrong. Right? But when we say that the world must be full of common sense, nowadays you know that common sense is not common anymore. Right? It's not common anymore. You don't know what is common sense. Sometimes, when we handle classes, we expect, for example, students to arrive, say 15 minutes after lecture, 15 minutes. Otherwise, the lecture is called off. Either the lecturers are not around or students are not around. Right? 15 minutes is the plus and minus. This is common sense in IIUM. Right? But later, I remember I have one class, PhD class on research methods. My class starts after Asar. At that time, it was 5 o'clock, and it ends up before Maghrib at 7. So I have one student, common sense, he should arrive if he's late 15 minutes before 5:15. But he arrives 15 minutes before 7. Is that common sense? And then when I asked him, brother, this is like 15 minutes, before classes finish, he said, better late than never, madam. I was like, oh my God. And I told you, you're going to be a leader in your country. You should not be this late. Right? You can be late, but not this late. This is like 15 minutes before class. You know, some of our lecturers, they say, better close the door. You know, if they come 15 minutes later than that, just close the door, they cannot enter. But to me, like, never mind. Perhaps in their first semester, they need to learn what common sense is all about. Now, these are often called morals or ethics and are sometimes enshrined in codes of conduct or rules of behavior. So it's easier if it is structured. As a legal person, I love things which are structured, easier. Make things easier. That's why when we run our index Sharia, we structured it so that people know exactly what it means. Easier. When I say this A, B, C, D, E, then you know exactly what A, B, C, D, E is. Values are important and long-lasting beliefs shared by members of a culture or community. They define what is good or bad, and they define you as a person. So as leaders of the Muslim Ummah, and later when you go back and build your country, you have to have these ethics or principles so that you are known by this principle. Right? In my second slide. The principles always worked if you worked the principles. Right? You have to work. Kalau kata, if you say, oh, it doesn't work. No, you have to work for the principles. Then the principles will work for you. Right? I wouldn't want to elaborate on this. I am showing you the picture of this lighthouse. Lighthouse can be considered like your principles. You can have all ships looking at whether this is safe or not. If they see a lighthouse means, and the lighthouse is giving you the guide. Without lighthouse, you are all over the place. You're all over the place. That's why when I teach family law, I said, guys, get married. All right, marriage is good for you because it gives you principles. You know when to come home. You know when to come home. In fact, you know, not necessarily. But again, you say home is where the heart is. All right? Your love can travel with you, but you must marry. Whatever it is, you must marry. Even if Socrates once said, this is not a family law lecture. Socrates said, whatever it is, you must marry. If your marriage is not a happy one, you'll be like me, like Socrates. You become a philosopher. All right? Now, because if you're married, you're grounded. That's why in Islam, if you're married, you fulfill half of your religion. Right? Next. Now, this is a Malay proverb. A tree with strong roots laughs at storms. Perhaps the Malays here, I don't know whether you have heard this proverb or not. A tree with strong roots laughs at storms. Because without good roots, a tree, even a breeze, will fail like anything because it doesn't have strong roots. So what are your strong roots? Your principle. So in a society, if you become leaders, make sure the tree will have strong roots. And this is a very challenging task to do. My introduction is a bit long, but it is like I'm leading you, warming you up to the principle of wasatiyah. Now, I'm looking for actually pictures of, they say, if you want to know whether the tree is a strong tree, you see the color of the leaves. The color of the leaves. If the leaves are yellow, there is something wrong with the roots. So if you go back to your society and you see that there are many social problems in your society, go to the root of the problem. Do not go and see, oh, the wilting leaves. The wilting leaves is just indication that there is something wrong with the roots. Okay, perhaps if we can ask any of the organization to sit down and identify our root problem. All right? But here you are trained to be leaders. Maybe there's something wrong with the leaders. The leaders are not trained or are not strong enough, or are not exposed enough. You're here, for example, if you're from Bangladesh, you don't mix with other people from other countries. You only mix among your Bangladeshi friends. That doesn't work. You know, it's a waste for you to come all the way from Bangladesh and then you mix with your Bangladesh friends. Please mix with other friends as well, from Tunisia, from Egypt, from wherever. All right? And sometimes it's good that when we run, we call it ice-breaking sessions. If you can get as many friends as possible from other countries. That is the basis for your network. If you need help, you can just give a call and say, Anas, let's say, for example, if I'm in Turkey, I'm supposed to be in Turkey, then I can just call Anas. Anas, I'm arriving at 6:30 in the morning, which I used to do and make problems for him. Because the flight from Malaysia to Turkey will arrive at 6:30 in the morning. Who wants to wait for a rector 6:30 in the morning? Yeah, she's the rector, but 6:30? So, with pleasure. Brother Anas say with pleasure. So that's the network. We don't have to wait for 4 years, Brother Anas. I think the last 2 years of your studies here, I met him and found him and made him my son. All right, next we go to the, this slide is very important, brothers and sisters. I wish we have Prof. Kamal with us today, but he's not well. We have put him as one of our keynote speakers on Wasatiyah, but he couldn't come, he's not well. I am relating this diagram to you, though it's a little bit complicated. I wish we can be on the same page when we define Wasatiyah. This is the structure of Al-Wasatiyah. This is a graphic representation of the concept of Wasatiyah, image source from Prof. Kamal Hassan, of which he gave a lecture in Singapore on Wasatiyah. I, alhamdulillah, managed to follow some of the lectures and fortunate enough to have discussions and the setting up and a witness of the setting up of our International Institute of Wasatiyah. When we wanted to set up something along the same line, we were happy that it was not called moderates, global moderates, because we have already global moderates. At that time, the Institute of Wasatiyah under JPM was about to be launched. We were already preparing for it and discussing about the term. And then we found out that it's also in the pipeline by the government, but so for us is the research institute. Because to do things, to come up with policies, we really need people to sit down and discuss, to have the luxury of thinking. So it must be research-based. And we call it Wasatiyah. And we don't have any problems in justifying our move because this is a term used by the Quran. So we were happy and at peace with the utilization of the term. Like when we had discussion with Datuk Nasha, he said in his first 1 year, he had so many problems, you know, like having to define the meaning of global moderates, having to define the meaning of moderates. For us, we have no problem because we just interpret what is meant by the Quran. So this is the interpretation made by Prof. Kamal, where according to him, Wasatiyah must be grounded on 2 sources, i.e. Al-Quran and As-Sunnah. If you were to use your rational thinking, all right, without grounding on Al-Quran and As-Sunnah, perhaps it becomes moderate. Perhaps it becomes moderate, because what is it? So whatever we want to do, we will have to refer back to the primary source. That is Al-Quran and Sunnah. And then, according to him, it must be also be grounded on 3 pillars. The pillars of Iman or belief, because without Iman, things will not work. It will just be for show, or sometimes you say plastic. All right? Plastic, this is just plastic. But if we really believe this is where the passion is, passion. You're passionate about things because you believe in it. So belief or tawhid, or they call it, sometimes the tawhidic paradigm is the main purpose of having wasatiyah, the iman. 2, ilm or knowledge. Without knowledge, you can still walk, but you're walking not knowing where you're going. Right? So you have to have knowledge on wasatiyah. You have to. And all leaders must have knowledge. Because for us, academics, we feel that education is the best mechanism to change a society. You have so many mechanisms to change society, but the best tested through research is through education. So here we are, we brought you from all over the world to congregate, to get knowledge, to share knowledge, to discover knowledge. Now this is the era, the 21st century is to discover knowledge. You have the murabbi to guide you, but basically you're on your own to discover things. Right? The third one is taqwa. The third one is taqwa. This is like, what is the meaning of taqwa? There's so many readings on this. You do your own reading, you discover it. But if you have some problems with this, you refer to many books on wasatiyah. So these are the 3 important components besides Al-Quran and As-Sunnah, which is the basis. Then you go to excellence and goodness. Sometimes they say, what is the meaning of wasatiyah, which comes from the Arabic word wasat, which means in the middle, which means moderate. So we were discussing about this. There was a long discussion. I remember Prof. Kamal came out with the tafsir of certain ayat, and then Prof. Mahmud Zuhdi came out with a very good interpretation. I was like, oh, okay, this is my first time hearing this, right? He said, you know, wasatiyah, wasat is in the middle. In the middle. In the middle means, for example, for humans, you have 3 stages of life. You start off as a baby or toddler, and then you become adult, and then you go into, what do you call that stage when you're old? Old age. Some of us are already old age, but and yeah, because old age comes with young means you're young and you're not stable, right? Old age as well, you're not stable anymore, physically, mentally, all right. So in the middle, moderate means the best, which is youth, where you are physically strong and mentally strong. So that is the interpretation of wasatiyah. It's not like in the middle means I'm average, this one between 2 extremes. Yeah, indeed, between 2 extremes as well. But the extreme of being unable to take care of yourself because you're young, and unable to take care of yourself because you're old. So moderate means, yes, when you are an adult and you are at the state of your youth. That's wasatiyah. Another interpretation which I love as well is in a day, okay, this is just an example. You have morning, you have noon, and you have night. The 3 stages in a day. So the interpretation moderate, quote unquote moderate, is when the sun is scorching hot, which is in the noon. Alright, so that's wasatiyah. It means excellence and goodness when the sun is at its peak. So young people here, you are our wasat. With knowledge, with iman, and with taqwa. Alright, so that's another interpretation of wasat, which is acceptable and which is part of the discussion today. Give me another, how many more minutes do I have? Justice, okay. No, please, Brother Anas. When I see some of you sleeping, then I have to stop. Justice is a very important component because this term is used in the Quran. But justice, it talks about strength, it talks about power, it talks about dignity. You cannot have justice without power. You have to have power to withstand justice and to implement justice. But again, when you study justice from the legal perspective, absolute justice, can you continue? Absolute justice corrupts absolutely. Absolute power, no wonder you cannot continue. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So your power, you must have check and balance. Otherwise, when you feel that you have lots of power, you just think and decide and do whatever you want to do. That's why now the current development on Robert Mugabe, they say he is an autocratic leader. He has been in power and absolute power for 37 years. 37 long years. And after that, his wife. So we cannot have absolute power. So when we talk about wasatiyah, justice it relates itself to strength, power and dignity. These are the balancing act of justice. Next is moderation. So this is the part, moderation, inter-religious tolerance and peaceful coexistence. This is Datuk Nasha and his GMM, where he will have to concentrate on inter-religious tolerance, peaceful coexistence. We just celebrated the Tolerance Day, International Tolerance Day on the 16th of November, where we invite all the religious leaders, so inter-religious. We are living in a world, they always say, this is already a cliche, the global village. But 30 years from now, if you are sitting next to a friend who are non-Muslim, then you say, okay, it's not tolerance anymore. I have to accept him. That's why that day we mentioned to Tan Sri Joseph Kurup, I think we should celebrate not International Day of Tolerance, it's International Day of Acceptance. Then he said, yeah, in Sabah, he's from Sabah, kan? He said, in Sabah, we marry each other, you know, we eat with each other, we are more tolerant than other people in Peninsula, Malaysian Peninsula, because we live in that kind of society. I think in 30 years' time, no more tolerance. I always give example when you say tolerance, you have a neighbor, your neighbor has dogs. Let's say at night the dogs bark, you just keep quiet because you are tolerating. If you are not tolerating, you will just give poison to the dogs and the dogs will die. Isn't it? That's being tolerant. But being accepting the neighbor's way of doing things, perhaps we can sit down with him and tell him, hello, can you buy a dog which is a silent dog? This one I learned, you know, from my teacher, that a good dog which takes care of security is a silent dog. When you see thieves coming into the house, you don't bark because it will, you know, when the dog barks, the thieves will run away. A good security dog is, it will never bark, it will just bite. So you have to explain this to your neighbor in the spirit of him accepting that you can't live with a barking dog. A barking dog, you know, to live side by side. Next you have tolerance and peaceful coexistence. We have had, I think, several. We even have an International Institute of Alliance of Civilization, where we teach our leaders on peaceful coexistence, how to live side by side. In fact, we are working together with Japnin, Ministry of Unity, that we are going to set up a mediation center for religious leaders. So if they have problems, we just have to sit down and identify and try to sort out. I think this is my third slide. After this, I will go on fast. Next. This I will pass it to Dr. Ismail to explain the different interpretations of Islam through a number of manhaj and the rising of non-state actors in promoting extremism and terrorism in the name of jihad. We have a few young people. I remember those days, way back in I joined this university in 1985. This was like, what, 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago. One day I remember the principal of one mahala, we had only one mahala for brothers at that time. I was the principal for the sisters. So I saw this guy by the name of Pak Ya, we call him Pak Ya, his name is Zakaria Man. I said, where are you going, Pak Ya? He says, I'm going to the brothers' college. I said, what happened? The brothers are fighting. They are fighting and both are from the Mujahidins at that time. I said, what happened? One is a commander, one is a soldier. The commander command the soldier to do a few things, and the soldier say, hello, excuse me, this is Malaysia. In Malaysia, you're not commander, I'm not a soldier. We are equal, okay, we are equal. They came from this jihad of ensuring that Afghanistan remains a country. At that time, they were invaded by the Russians. And then I remember Datuk, or we call him Cikgu Siddiq Baba, he said he received a letter from one of the generals. He wrote a letter, he says, my place is not here. My place is not here, although I was brought here to study, but my place is in Afghanistan. I'm going back to do jihad. And a few months later on, we heard that he passed away. That is real jihad. But what is happening now is a different kind of jihad. Next slide. Jihad and terrorism, a misunderstood concept of Islam. And we now know in Malaysia itself, we have a number of young people wanting to be suicide bombers. And to them, this is jihad. We were joking one day, I can't remember with whom I said, we were saying it in Malay, we said, you can't even have jihad to take your, when you sleep and you want to pray Fajr, you can't even do jihad in that. And you are talking about jihad in Syria. This is the biggest jihad. Yeah? Okay, next, I think this is the last slide. We would like to use your expertise. Young people, you're very clever in this. Perhaps we belong to the old school. I belong to the old school. Prof. Walid, you seems to be in the old school as well. Prof. Tahir Masawi. He did. For those who are interested to read, who cannot read in Arabic, you can read his translation on Maqasid Syariah. He did a very good translation on Tahir Ibn Ashur on Maqasid Syariah, right? The higher objectives of the Sharia. All right, so you can use social media to counter extremism. Though there are many sites talking about countering extremism, you as young leaders, you have the weapon with you, please use this, the social media. Get a right information, spread the message. Number two, promote Islamic values. Again, I mentioned about you having principles. Please promote Islamic values. Stop promoting Islamic, there's no such thing as Islamic hedonism. You are very lucky. I considered you very lucky because we have about 6,000 to 7,000 international students on campus. This campus alone can take up 20,000. How many of you in this hall? This hall can accommodate 350. I know I was the dean here before. 350. Look at the empty seats that should be filled by people who should be taking this opportunity for this kind of exposure. It's not easy to bring our brother from Istanbul there. Both are from Istanbul. It's not easy to bring a few others as well. And it's not easy to work with the ministry, right? They are very kind. They sit down with us. We discuss about having this program. But I remember they said, tak boleh lah puan, we have, at that time, sukan tu, what do you have? What do you call? You have SEA Games. You know, they are so busy doing so many big things. Huh? And when we have this at the university, sometimes I feel so ashamed because opportunities given to our students are not taken up. But that's quite okay. Sometimes I always make peace with myself. Huh? Maybe the seats, they are all the malaika sitting in the seats. In fact, my husband was telling me yesterday, he says, oh, he went to hear a tazkirah. For every one human born, 10 malaika, 10 or 100 or 1,000 are born as well. And out of that, you know, he was explaining the statistics of human to malaika and all. I was like, oh, what are you trying to tell me? He says, don't worry, if your class is not full, the wings of the angels are there. So I say, okay, fine. I'm seeing angels here. And we are sitting with angels. Correct, Brother Anas? Yeah. All angels. And you have become angels yourself. Angels in disguise. Yeah. Yes, I think this is my last slide. Next. Yeah, I think these are all the thank yous in various languages to show that we really thank your presence here and the fact that you have volunteered yourself for this kind of exposure. Just now, I just want to end with my YB's whisper to me just now, YBKJ. He says, Prof, he said, 17 years ago I was here in this hall. I say, what, 17 years ago? That's a long time. He says, I can still remember this hall. There was this discussion and debate with PAS and the opposition in this very hall. And now I'm a minister. So I say, I'm so happy to hear that. So 17 years from now,
you will be ministers over here.
I don't know where you will be. But I pray and hope that you will be a good leader to the Muslim Ummah. With that, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yes. You don't want to wait that long. Yeah, if you're already 40, you cannot wait that long. But if you're still young, if you're below 30, yeah, count that 17 years as your exposure. And I would love to see you again coming back with power. But not absolute power, with power which is done in total justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Zaliha, for this wonderful presentation. We will keep the questions after the next speaker, inshallah, because we are running out of time. Next speaker will be Assistant Professor Ismail Yailaji from Shahid University, Department of Political Science and International Relations. Please join me in welcoming him.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I want to thank our friends here at IIUM and also the ministry who are hosting us. I want to thank them for their hospitality, first of all. And second of all, I am not an alumni of this university, but it's okay. But I, Sancho Sebalaban, who did his undergraduate here, then went to United States for PhD, and we are together serving. And International Islamic University in Malaysia has always been very close to our hearts. I used to, I listened to different professors from here, from Abdullah Hassan to others, back and forth in Istanbul, in other places. And honestly, it was always very close to our hearts. And that's why I'm also very glad to be here. That's my first time here in Malaysia. But I'm very grateful for your hospitality and very happy to be here. And third of all, as the program shows, I'm not a speaker in this panel. Actually, the speaker in this panel was Sami El-Aryan, who is a professor in one of the universities in Istanbul, Istanbul Sabahattin Zaim University. But he couldn't make it to our event here. So he couldn't come. And yesterday I was asked to speak in this panel. And I said, for sure, why not? So what I will do is that I'll share some of my comments with you. I'll try to be quite brief. And then I would be very glad to have your comments and questions afterwards. Islam is a rule-based religion. As Professor Zeliha suggested and discussed, Islam is a religion in which your life, the entirety of your life, is regulated by rules. We call this Sharia. This is the entirety of ethical and normative and sometimes legal injunctions and based on values. So to be a Muslim is to live in accordance and in compliance with Sharia, which is values. We cannot separate Sharia. We cannot have an overly legalistic understanding of Sharia where it is solely about state power. But Sharia is a normative and legal structure by which we have to live. So to talk about values in Islamic tradition for us Muslims, first of all, we look at the Quran and the Sunnah, as Professor Zeliha suggested here, with reference to Professor Kemal. The values that we have to live by are very clearly stated in the Quran, and we also see it practiced and taught in the traditions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, for example, when we look at those values, of course, depending on which field you look at, we see different values coming up. And the list is long. But I will talk quite briefly about some of them, name some of them, and I will try to come to a different point from this discussion. For example, the sanctity of life, the sanctity of human life. We have an ayah in the Quran that says, whomever kills a person innocent is like he killed the entire humanity. Justice, a term, a value that has been incessantly, consistently being mentioned in the Quran, that we Muslims have to abide by in our personal and communal lives. Compassion, humility. I was very struck when I read, and all the time when I hear the verse, I'm very moved by Allah's injunction that we shouldn't walk on earth in a proud manner, walk on earth in humility. Honoring parents, one's responsibility toward his parents or her parents. Contentment, qana'a, as opposed to greed, for example. Cooperating in righteousness, to race in righteous deeds. Forgiveness, mercifulness, seeking knowledge, faculty of reasoning. Incessantly we see in the Quran the term repeated, which says, أَفَلَا يَتَفَكَّرُونَ تَتَفَكَّرُونَ, always calling us to reflect, to use our own reason in the guidance of revelation. And being truthful to one's own self, respect for others, respect for environment, respect for ecology, and charitable giving. These are just some cherry picking of the values. These are this is not an exhaustive list. This is just some of the values that we adhere to as Muslims. Of course, speaking solely about values is in the realm of ethics. But in communal life, we need states and laws to enforce some of these ethical injunctions in the form of laws. Because as Aristotle said, only a community of angels wouldn't need laws. Because if you live in community, maybe angels are here in these seats, but still we need laws. But as we all know, and as Professor Zeliha also mentioned, Islamic scholars, starting with Shatibi, developed a tradition of thinking in Islamic jurisprudence, which basically aim to come up with the fundamental goals of the entirety of this Sharia structure, the values and ethical and normative injunctions. The objectives of Sharia. And as we all know, I assume everyone knows in this room, that this consists of first the necessities, the zaruriyat, second what is translated as convenience, the hajiyat, and the third one is refinements or embellishments, which is tahsiniyat or kemaliyat. The reason why I mentioned maqasid al-Sharia is because I think, of course, fuqaha discuss to what extent it is a right way of thinking about Sharia or not, but the point is it provides us with a systematic account of Islamic values. And these are, when we look at the necessities, the core of these values, there are 5, as we all know. The first one being life, the second one religion, the third one property, fourth intellect, and fifth progeny. Some scholars say justice should be added as the sixth maqasid or maqsad of the Sharia, sixth objective of the Sharia. Some scholars, like a young scholar, Yasir Qadi in the United States, argues that the American Constitution the American founding fathers rests on the writings of John Locke, who, he argues, took his formula of life, liberty, property from his reading of Islamic sources. In some senses, if that claim is true, the idea of the long-cherished life, liberty, property in the American Constitution comes from our maqasid al-Sharia. But, this is things that we all know. But I think the crucial question facing us is that to what extent are we living up to these values? Unfortunately, the speeches this morning, including the ministers, point out that we are way back in matching the standards of ethical behavior when it comes to our personal and communal lives. For example, look at life. Muslims, maqasid al-Sharia says protection of life is a core value regardless of one's religion, one's ethnicity, one's nationality, whatever. If you are a human being, if you are born into this world, then it's an Islamic injunction to protect one's life. But when we go across the Muslim world, when we visit 57 countries of the Muslim world, how many of them are safe, even for their own citizens? I was just talking yesterday to a friend who said he cannot go to his home country, to the city that his family lives, and I will not name the country, of course, because it's not safe. It's not safe for him to walk through the streets, that he would be, maybe taken for ransom or something else. So to what extent are we really respectful of that fundamental principle? Whenever in the Muslim world we see the rise of ethnic conflicts, mass murders, atrocities conducted in the name of sectarian identities, intolerance. So this is not a world in which our Islamic values are put into practice. Or take the second core principle of religion, for example. One of the objectives of Sharia. religion is not just about Muslims should live by their religion. It's about every other religious groups, especially Ahlul Kitab is given a special position here, or other religious groups have to live by their religion. It's an Islamic duty to help them live in accordance with their religion. And where are we in this? Okay, it's how safe it is to be a Sunni, for example, in Basra. How safe it is to be a Shiite in Riyadh, let alone other religions. Okay, we don't even practice the core fundamental teaching value of Islam at in our own neighborhoods, in our states. For example, when Umar ibn Khattab, the second caliph, conquered Jerusalem and Quds, inshallah next year the OIC youth capital will be Jerusalem and Quds. This is what Umar Khattab basically made into a pact with the peoples living, especially the Christians of the city. And the pact stated this: this is the protection which the servant of Allah, Emir al-Mu'minin, leader of the faithful, grants to the people of Palestine. Thus, protection is for their lives, property, church, cross, for the health and sick, and for all their co-religionists. In this way, that their churches shall not be turned into dwelling houses, nor will they be pulled down, nor any injury will be done to them, or to their enclosures, nor to their cross, and nor will anything be deducted from their wealth. No restrictions shall be made regarding their religious ceremonies. And later on, there are accounts, like people like Theodosius of Jerusalem, who say that they live under Muslims they are most free under Muslims, that they are free to practice their religion. Or other Jewish historians, for example, say Jews lived their best lives under Muslims, especially in the Ottoman times. Or think about racial equality, for example, that comes with it. Okay, an important historian, Arnold Toynbee, said this is the sentence he used. He said, the extinction of race consciousness as between Muslims is one of the outstanding achievements of Islam, and in the contemporary world there is, as it happens, a crying need for the propagation of this Islamic virtue. Racial thinking was lost with the teachings of Islam, not socially, but in terms of doctrine, it was lost. But look what's happening, for example, in places like Somalia. They are of the same race, but the fact that they are not in the same tribal group becomes a reason to kill each other. Okay, we are far away from these teachings. Think of the sectarian violence that is raging in the Muslim world, especially in the Middle East. Of course, the rise of sectarianism, this mazhab-based thinking, or an extreme mazhabism, might be the term here. Of course, it's not solely about it's not solely a theological problem. The kind of sectarianism we have, especially in the Middle East, wasn't there, for example, 30 years ago. Still we had mazhabs, still they didn't, at some points they didn't sit well with each other. But it was not that kind of sectarianism. Remember, one of the closest allies in the Middle East was Saudi Arabia and Iran, right before the Iranian Revolution. They were buddies, okay? They didn't think that these are Wahhabis, these are Shiites, so we should be on each other's throat. They were actually the closest allies in the Middle East, together under the umbrella of American hegemony. But, for example, if we didn't have the American occupation of Iraq, if we didn't have the failed state in Iraq, if we didn't have the collapse of central authority, we didn't have that kind of sectarian violence and identity. The rise of Daesh couldn't be possible if it wasn't for the lack of authority in the region, in Iraq especially. So, but having said that, we should also see that there is a fertile soil for the sectarian extremism to take hold. And we see that these extremist thinking, especially when it comes to sects, is becoming much more, this is the paradox of moderation. We're talking about wasatiyya, moderation. It's always much more appealing to be on the sides. This is the advantage of extremists. To talk about the moderation becoming, or either in terms of tolerance or acceptance, depending on whether you want to kill the dog of your neighbor or you want to change it. This whole thing, excuse me, when I went to the dogs, I just lost my track of thought. Wouldn't be possible without this political atmosphere, right? The political atmosphere, when you come and say, be moderate in your thinking, be moderate in your actions, because this is what ummatan wasatan means. If you are to put into practice this Quranic injunction to be the ummatan wasatan, then this is what it's not appealing. It's always appealing to be on the extreme sides and to be waging wars, to be the hero of the other one side. Okay? So this is, I think, one challenge that we have to face. That's why we have to make our moderate position much more appealing, because there is a sense, especially among literate, educated Muslims, that to be a moderate as if it was to be a lazy, a compromised Muslim. It's not. To be a moderate Muslim is not being a compromised Muslim. To be a moderate Muslim is to reject resorting to violence whenever, if you are not attacked, of course. To rejecting extremist ideas. It's not being lazy in terms of thinking. It's not being compromised. Recently, in 2010, two economists from George Washington University, two Iranian economists, came up with an Islamicity index. I'm sure you have heard of it. This is an index. It has its own faults, it has its own problems, but this is an index that tries to develop some indicators of Islamicness, whatever, because Islam seeks to regulate our social communal life as well as individual life, and they'll say, if Islam wants this, then these are indicators. Then we will come up with an index of Islamicity, and we will look at all 2,206 countries on earth. It turns out, in the year that they came up with this list, the first 10 countries are not Muslim. The first 10 countries that achieve the highest score of Islamicity are in the order Ireland, Denmark, Luxembourg, Sweden, United Kingdom, New Zealand, Singapore, Finland, Norway, Belgium. In that list, the first Muslim country that enters into the list is Malaysia. And in that list, Malaysia is 38. In terms of the Islamicity index, the first Muslim country enters into the list from the 38th level. Okay? So the remaining 37 countries who are not Muslim, who are not OIC members, by the way, this is the definition, they are not OIC member countries, they rank higher in terms of their Islamicness, in terms of how much their political, economic, legal system, social structure, benefits, income distribution, equity, fairness, healthcare, these kinds of things. How much they approximate Islamic norms. This is, I think, a very stark picture of where we are. In 2010, the second Muslim country that enters into the list is Kuwait, which is 48. Again, after Malaysia, 38. The 9 other countries are, again, not OIC member countries. The list changes a little bit in 2015, but still, for example, Qatar enters into the list from the top, which is 39. Compared to 2010, it means there is one more country is becoming much more Islamic in terms of these indicators than the rest of the Muslim countries, 39. Malaysia is again very high, it's 43. It's the third highest ranking country, Muslim country in the Muslim world. So I think it correlates with what your minister suggested in the morning, that Malaysia actually is doing quite good in that sense. There is a way to go for all of us, for all Muslim countries, but I think it's apt to voice it here. So the way forward, as our speaker suggested, there are no magic formulas anywhere. Okay, nowhere is an easy solution to anything. But the only thing that I personally believe deeply is that it all starts with us. It all starts with us. It creates a bottom-up pressure to be first practicing these ethical norms, values, and then pushing forward to observe, pushing upwards to observe these norms, and then these norms become so preponderant that it becomes the guiding principle, the game in town. This is an optimist way of looking at it. The pessimist way would be, it can only be in the personal ethical level. But as Muslims, I think we don't have the luxury to be pessimist. At least we can be cautionary optimist. But we all have to have this edge if we are Muslims. Then it all starts with us and with our communal efforts to coming together, networking like this to promote Islamic values to be a force for good. Thank you for your patience, and I look forward to your comments, questions. Thank you.
My name is Nasib Ahmed Siddiqui. I'm a master student. I'm doing my research in aerospace engineering here. My question is to our respected rector that there are three things: birth, growth, and death. There are three universal things. But as you said, you have suggested that we have to accept. Instead of tolerating something, we have to accept. So if we are giving this philosophy of acceptance, so after this acceptance, there will be a growth also. There will be a growth. So what you are expecting from that growth with other religions? Because as we see in the history, once the Greek civilization was very high, so Jews started to follow them. But after some time, they annihilated all the rules and regulation of Greeks and they lost their religion. And the same philosophy of acceptance has happened in India also. I belong to India. So during the freedom fighting time, there was non-cooperation movement. On that time, the Hindu and Muslims were so accepting each other's that Hindus were coming inside the mosques and praying, and the Muslims were going to the temples. So as per your philosophy, what type of acceptance and what is the limit of acceptance in future in terms of growth you would like to expect? Assalamu alaikum.
Anna, I am a student from Kuliah of Economics, and my question is open to the floor. I just want to ask that we are, as mentioned before, especially in the minister's speech, he said that we should be proud of the fact that we are part of a country whose national religion is Islam. Therefore, we can practice Islam on a national level. When it comes to coming together and bringing forth values and ideas of what we want the country to be in the scope of Islam, how do we ensure that other people from other faiths and other ethnical backgrounds do not feel limited or do not feel discriminated against? When in fact that obviously when we want to bring towards Islam to the national level, we would feel more comfortable working with Muslims or Muslim brothers and sisters, but we do not want to make them feel that we don't see them as nationals of our own country. So that would be my question.
Thank you very much.
I think all of us here in this hall agree with the idea of moderation, agree with the idea of what we call,
I was kidding, but it turns real.
Okay, sorry. My question is on how we are going to address this problem, because there are many issues involved. It is not about wasatiyah per se, that talking about religion's understanding about Islam, but you say that on how we're going to tackle this terrorism is not only because misunderstanding of religion, but as far as I'm concerned, there are people outside there who want to pay revenge to what happened to their family members, bombings here and there, to what happens to their daughters, kids. I think these people are moving now and try to influence others, but they are not properly addressed. Should we say to them, stop revenge, stop doing this thing, we will pay revenge for you? No? or on how we're going to address these kinds of people, that they contribute a lot to this, what we call terrorism, and they have the right to do so, Islamically, if I'm not mistaken. Please help me to have better understanding of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My question is, I think it's going to be a bit sensitive in that sense. I'm from a communication background, so I believe in Muslim community or non-Muslim community, there need interaction of honest discussion, conversation on the current issue that we are facing. However, there's a paradox in it as well, since we believe that everyone have the freedom to express and in terms of opinion, so that we can have the whole landscape, we can see the whole landscape of the issue. Like Kamali Hashim mentioned that discussion on religious matter must involve sociology, psychology, so that we can understand the community as a whole. But if we were to apply it in full sense, then in a discussion within the community, we have to involve LGBT as well, as a minority voice, right? In order to establish what we say about justice, about fairness, in terms of the majority voice and of course the minority voice, which clearly, in a way, we disagree with LGBT itself. However, it is a part of the community right now. They are there, right, whether we like it or not. So how can we approach this in the sense of promoting wasatiyah, a middle path of opinions for everyone to be honest with their opinions, including the minority voice that we not necessarily agree with? Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for the wonderful questions. Let me give a response, a general response probably to all of it. First of all, there's always this risk when it comes to the relationship between religion and state. There's always this risk of having majorities and minorities. So one option is to say the state will be completely ripped of any religious reference. That would be something along the lines of Stalin's Soviet Union, for example. Even French laïcité, which was the most extreme version of separation of state and religion, for example, in its even most radical times, continued to support church schools. So when it comes to, because Catholicism is the majority religion in France, there is no way you either will establish a state on Moon or Venus or Mars somewhere so that you make sure that it's completely neutral to everyone. If it is a state, and if one goal of a state is to be responsive to the demands of its own people, then you have to accommodate these demands. Now, for example, a majority of the German people were fine with extinction of a religious group, an ethnic group, the Jewry in Germany. It didn't make it right. Whatever people demand doesn't necessarily become right. But there are demands, and this is a very extreme version. In philosophy, they even say reductio ad Hitlerum. If you want to attack an idea, you sometimes make it resemble to Hitler somewhere, because it's a very extreme case and it becomes very absurd to support. But the point is, there are justifiable, legitimate demands of majority groups in any society. You know, it might be here, it might be Turkey, it might be Egypt. And remember, Muslims are minorities in a lot of countries too. And I think one responsibility that we Muslims have in the world we live in is that whatever we say here in this room in Malaysia, we have to be able to say it when we go to India. We have to be able to say it when we go to France. We have to be able to say it when we go to Turkey or Egypt. Because it's not a world like you can talk in small groups and the discourse remains in small circles. Our ideas are becoming very quickly global. So any kind of solution we will develop has to be global too. Now, more directly coming to your question, it is, for example, if you look at European or Western countries in general, they follow different paths in terms of how state relates to religion or religion relates to state. For example, the Americans say a wall of separation between religion and politics. Religion and state, not religion and politics. But it never was the case. If you look at American Supreme Court's decisions, it very consistently refers to Christian tradition. Okay? The United States claims to be very proud of the first secular country on earth, which is true. It's the first country that put separation of religion and state in its constitution, but that country never separates it. Okay? Because when you separate religion and state, but you say religion and politics can be mixed, politics in large part is about state. Now, it comes to the point of respecting to the rights of others. To have, if in a position where a majority have a position, have a demand, the fact that minority doesn't go with it is not necessarily a reason to say destroy that demand. But in any democratic society, and I think it's also concurrent with our Islamic teachings too, in some senses, that you have to respect the rights. It's majority rule, minority rights. Majority will rule on the basis of respect for the rights of minority. Now, what are these rights? Where do they start? Where do they end? It can only be negotiated on very specific cases. For example, linking that question to the question on LGBT. LGBT rights is not the only question, is not the question that is a problem for just Muslims. If you look at, for example, Western countries, especially, say, the United States, it is a huge debate. But it's not the only debate. For example, euthanasia, whether you can end your life with your own will. The debate about capital punishment, whether you can kill a person because of the severity of the crime he or she conducted. Or human cloning, can you clone a human being? These are questions whose answers are not easy, whose answers are, whatever answer you give to these questions, it's dividing, always dividing. So the point, there is no point where we will develop a platform that would be universally comprising everyone. Not possible, impossible, I think, theoretically too. Okay? Because the attempt that comes closest to it was Stalin's. Stalin said, in public life, I have no respect for religion. But that's a position. It cannot, if you look at from the other side, it is the utmost universalistic position. Okay? The French laïcité defends itself by saying, I'm clearing public space from all religious symbols. In the name of what? In the name of fairness, justice, equality. But hey, if I'm a Muslim, if I want to go to school, what the hell I'm going to do? Okay? It's not doing justice to me. Okay? I don't think we can find a formula that will work every time, everywhere on these dividing issues. I think the point is we Muslims have a particular position on what a homosexual behavior means. And I think it's also quite misunderstood, in my opinion. Okay, if you look at Islamic history, the practices are rather different as to what Muslim states do. But still, being a Muslim is to have these values that sees homosexual behavior as anathema, as one of the biggest sins. And there is nothing to shame with this. Okay? And this might be a majority demand. Okay? And it can be articulated in ways that can turn into law. The point is how you turn it into law. Okay? I think the devil is always in the details here, not in the big words. Okay? Whether homosexuality is legal, illegal, how? I think the specifics are very, very important here. This is why the question at hand should be taken quite specifically. And I think one last comment to the terror question. I agree with the brother that a lot of these terroristic actions are coming out of revenge. If your entire family is destroyed, okay, there is hardly anything that would console you. And probably you would have the utmost motivation to go and take your revenge. But if you look at the composition of Daesh, if you look at foreign fighters, these are just, criminal folks coming out of Netherlands, Britain, Germany, just to have some adventure, just to rape some more girls, just to kill, because if you are in Germany, staying at your home, probably you won't be able to kill a lot of people. But if you go to Iraq and you join a group, it's a fair game and it's fun and it pays. So not all these terroristic, especially I'm speaking in terms of Daesh, the foreign fighters joining Daesh, there's a very significant ratio of them have nothing to do with any kind of revenge. Some of them join because of ideological reasons, radicalization, extremization, but many of them just join through very criminal intentions because it pays. Maliki in Iraq, for example, when he was prime minister, he had an extremely sectarian policy agenda. He was extremely exclusionary when it came to the Sunnis. That's why a lot of Sunni tribes initially thought, Daesh might be something that would, quote unquote, take the revenge or be a lesson to extreme Shiitist version of Maliki policies. Okay, but of course that was at the initial stages. Grievances, the need to take revenge is feeding into terrorism, but it's not its even primary cause. I will speak very short in the other section. One professor of international relations made a systematic study of suicide bombings. And at the time it was very much related to Muslims, especially in Palestine, that this is terror perpetrated by Muslims. First, he found out that suicide attacks was invented by Tamil Tigers, which is a Marxist communist group. The highest number of attacks was perpetrated by, again, Marxist groups. Third, the overriding goal is not religious. It is to push an invader outside of the country, wherever it is. A push is perceived invader outside of the country. So it's deeply political in that sense. Thank you.
If I may, I don't know whether I can go back to my slide where Prof. Kamal did mention, if you can still remember, that everything, the grounding of wasatiyah is on Quran and Sunnah. What does Quran says about, for example, LGBT? This is an example. Whether this is freedom of expression, right? You did mention just now, I can't remember which one. Freedom of expression. Okay. Freedom of expression is guaranteed under our constitution, the Malaysian constitution. You are free to express yourself, freedom of expression, the way how you wear your things, the way you say things. But if you study freedom of expression, and if you study on justice, you will find that various scholars, not just Muslim scholars, mention your freedom to express yourself is like you extend your hand, I'm extending my hand now slowly, but that's your freedom. As long as your hand doesn't touch other people's nose, my hand doesn't touch Dr. Ismail's nose, that is the extent of my freedom. You studied this, law students. As your freedom of expression is as long as you do not touch other people's nose. Now, for example, in LGBT, there were many cases. There was a case, I remember, way back in 1990. One gay couple in a flight. They were kissing. Sorry, I'm just giving an expressive example. They were kissing each other in front of a child. So the mother was very disturbed, and as soon as she called the steward and said that this is very disturbing to my child. Like they can do what they want, but they have disturbed the sight of my child. So again, when we go to the general thing, if you to see the structure of Al-Wasatiyah, you will see that it is based on Al-Quran. And Al-Quran can never accept homosexuality. Never, ever. You see, you study the story of Lut. the time of Lut, Prophet Lut, what happened during his time? And you have the example now in Jordan. And you have to follow Al-Sunnah as well. So when we talk about now not just LGBT, they want to add more people to the group, they put I and Q. I say, what is I and Q? Queer, people who are queer, because they want to put more people in the group. We studied about reproductive health. And there was, I just want to share this story with you. There was one conference I went. We were lining up. At that time, we used phone for, there was no handphone yet at that time. This was in the 80s. I went to a conference in Cardiff at that time, in Cardiff, Wales. So this, I was sitting among a few Arabs. They were doing PhD in Cardiff. Then he says, sister, he said, look at that person's butt. I said, why should I look at other people's butt? Bottom. Huh? I said, it's extraordinary big, you know, sister. I said, and this is a guy. I said, I'm not going to look at other people's butt. And then later, the same person presented his or her, I'm not quite sure, because actually she is a, sometimes we call a she, it's a she-he, right? So she has become a he. And he presented his paper on the rights of the he-she's. I was like, okay. And then he said, I have gone through operation to change my she into he, but my passport could not be changed. The gender cannot be changed. So he was telling us in the conference that we have just been blessed by the birth of a son. So soon after the conference, I asked him, science has come to that stage that both she is a she, she has become a he married his own nurse, and they got a son. I said, science has come to that stage. And I said, don't be silly, he says. Science has not come to that stage. So this is like artificial insemination. So they got the son. So I was like still trying to understand this concept in the 80s. In year 2000, I got a number of cases of different sex marriage, but they do not want to consummate that marriage. And the marriage is just a sham. It's just a sham. It's a pretend because they want to be seen as okay in the public. But now, in the 21st century, same-sex marriage, of which I also want to understand. But I remember attending one of the politicians, he said, let them be married to each other, they will soon be extinct. Because they won't have any progeny. Because in Islam, part of being married is to create generations. How can generations come out of same sex? So if you see, the Quran is a scientific witness that if we go off tangent, right, because this is the straight path, if we go off tangent, then we are creating damages to our own humankind. We are creating that damage to our own humankind. So, when you talk about expression, later on I am suggesting to our brother here, to Brother Abdul Rahman, to come up with detailed discussion on the meaning of justice and on the meaning of freedom of expression, because human rights is the new religion in the 21st century. Everything, this is my right, that is your right, that is your right. But once you touch other people's nose, that is not your right anymore. This is not just from the Islamic point of view. From the civil law point of view, this is also not okay. Another question on acceptance. I go to the Quran again, on the verse lakum dinukum waliyadin. To you your religion, to me mine. We accept that person, but when it touches religion, again, you and your religion, me mine. Doesn't mean that you say, what is against my religion? For example, you force me to drink. You force me to drink. I said, again, we say, we can, as Muslims, we are not allowed to drink. We cannot harm our intellect. That is the basis of non-drinking, non-taking drugs. You have to protect the intellect, which is part of maqasid syariah. I know students say, very difficult, madam, to remember maqasid syariah. I say, what's so difficult about remembering maqasid syariah? You start from here, protection of the intellect, to protection of, I always use this, please remember this. First, you go to the head, protection of intellect. And then you go here, religion. I always use my right hand, religion, protection of deen. And then protection of property. You use your hands to find property, protection of mal, protection of property. What else? And then protection of life. So I use my heart, protection of life. Protection of progeny, you don't show. Very easy to remember. These are all the very important elements of maqasid syariah. 5. You have some more divided like protection of justice and all. But these are the 5 main protection. But again, I want to say, when you say that Islam is the religion of the state, other religions can be practiced. So because again, we say global village. If we sit with each other, a non-Muslim here, we say, fine, let's eat, let's drink, let's sleep. All right, for example. But if he says something which is against our religion, we say, thank you very much. This is not allowed by our religion. He will respect us because of the principles and values that we have. But if you do not have principles, they say, oh, you are the same like me. What is different? You are the same like me. So what is religion? Because again, I say, according to, when we say the structure of al-wasatiyah, where Allah is the supreme, with tawfiq, rahmah, ridwan, barakah, and to achieve al-falah, okay, this is the whole picture. You have to use your wisdom on how to live side by side with non-Muslims. So again, I am trying to propose this to Brother Abdul Rahman to do more programs on this for our young leaders here. Again, you said the devil is in the details. So this is the devil. Just now we talked about angels. This is the devil that we have to take care. So we hope, inshallah, we will do all this again using this slide. Whatever problem that is put unto us, using wasatiyah, I think we can do, or with our network, if we can create, at one time I wanted to create what we call IIMU, again using the social media, to ask this kind of questions to the mu'allim, what would be the answer so that the young people would know the right path. How do you handle with, for example, a wife who is a Muslim, later on converts and become a non-Muslim? Should you stay with her, or should you divorce her and marry another one? Or what is it? You know, so you have all this, for example, Yusuf Al-Qaradawi, he has his center of wasatiyah as well. He can answer this question. If they cannot come to us, we go to them. Like they say, if Muhammad cannot go to the mountain will go to Muhammad. With that, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I think we will not take another round as we are running out of time. Just to wrap up the session, I mean, I came up from the engineering background, so when I shifted to social sciences, I was all the time waiting for the answer. So where is the answer for the question that is raised up? And then I have learned in social sciences that there are no one answer for for our problems. So We have discussed the wasatiyya, the structure of wasatiyya in a brief way, and the values by Assistant Professor Ismail Yelaji. And we have a fact that we are back. I mean, this is we all agree on. But I think the wasatiyya, the youth that she mentioned it about it, has the potential and the hope. And I think, in my opinion, that one of the main problems is the absolute power that you mentioned about it, that corrupts the absolutely. And I will leave the answer for you. You are the youth, to contribute by your knowledge for our problem. With that, I would like to close the session. Thank you very much for your patience. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And now I would like to invite Professor Dr. Walid Fakri Faris, Director of International Institute for Muslim Unity, to present some token of appreciations to the speaker as well as the moderator.
If there is a water, there is no tayammum.